There's a difference between being aggressive and being someone people don't question. And most people never learn the difference. They either one, hold back to keep the peace, or they push too hard and they literally destroy and damage the entire room. But my friends, there's a third way where you speak clearly and you hold your position and people listen to you, not because you're loud, but because you're clear, because you're super concise, and most important, because you're in control of your own emotions. And that's what we're getting into today. So I want to jump right into this stuff. I have a question for you. Have you ever been called aggressive? And when you think about the interaction, in your own mind, you're saying something like, aggressive? I was just sharing my point, or I was just excited about what I said, or I'm just passionate about what I say. And it comes across like that when I deliver. Now, I want to talk about that today because here's the thing. We're not responsible for how other people receive us. However, we're 100% responsible for how we show up in rooms. And there's a way for you to manage yourself and manage your delivery so you ensure that what you say is received in the right way. So I want to go deep on a 3-step framework that will really show you how to be assertive without leaning into or without tipping into showing up in a way that people perceive as aggressive. Right. And for some people, this is this is like a hot topic, but I want you to stick with me for a moment. Now, the way I want to walk you through is I use this framework with my clients. So I work with clients. If you don't know me, Karen Donaldson, read my bio somewhere on my podcast. But nonetheless, I work with high performers. I work with C-suite executives to show them how to command the room, own the room, and be connected while doing that. So one of the frameworks that I use that I'm going to talk about today is called the Calm Authority Framework. And like I'll reiterate, it will show you how you can be assertive and be fully heard without showing up as aggressive. Now, there's 3 parts to the framework, and I'm going to share all 3, and then I'm going to go back and go a lot deeper on those frameworks. Part 1 of the framework is this: regulate before you respond. Let go of reacting. It's about controlling your physiology. The second part of the framework is this: saying less, but meaning more. I always talk about precision over volume. The third part of the framework is you holding strong and holding the line without needing to win. And this is huge. A lot of the time when we go into conversations where we believe it's a debate, we go in and that energy shows up as you being overly aggressive because in your mind, you need to win. We're going to talk about detached authority as well. All right, so let's go to the first part of the framework: regulating yourself before you respond, right? You're controlling your physiology because a lot of people believe that assertiveness is about what they say. And my friends, it's not about what you say. It's completely about the state that you say it from, like how you come across. Where's that energy coming from? So if your nervous system, if you're excited, if your nervous system is elevated, then you will rush, you will over-explain, or you'll sound really sharp, and it comes across as confrontational. And that's exactly how people will receive you on the other end. Now, if you regulate yourself, and I call it state management, you will sound calm, you will be grounded, you'll also sound clearer, and this is the biggest piece. You'll show up as being in control. And when I work with my clients, whether they are C-suite executives, managers, entrepreneurs, we create their pre-performance routine so they can always be intentional with managing their state, no matter what's going on around them. Got it? So here's the calm authority rule. Don't speak from a reactive state. I only want you to start to speak when you can manage how you show up. So from a regulated state. Let me tell you a bit of a story. So I currently have a client who is a COO, a chief operating officer, and the rumor mill that was going on around their organization was this. My client had a nickname, and his nickname was, it no longer is, it was Mr. Edgy. And no one would ask him anything because they know that when he responds, it's like, like this whole huge bear. And whenever he was in a meeting, what he shared was just really aggressive, or that's how he came across. So no one would ever interact with him. And when he was in a meeting and he asked for feedback or other people's opinions, no one wanted to put up their hand and no one wanted to say anything whatsoever. So when he came to me, that was the issue. He told me what his nickname was, and he said, Karen, I don't know where it came from. And in that moment, and I'm a different type of coach when I work with my clients, and I really don't care who they are, how many cars, summer homes, private jets they have. We do the work. But I laughed when he said he did not know where his nickname came from. And I asked him to just pause for a minute and be honest with himself. Not with me, just be honest with himself. Where did the nickname come from? And what he said was this. He said, Karen, when I answer people's questions, I'm really overexcited. And when I share things, I'm a big guy to start with. And sometimes I speak a little bit louder and sometimes I rush, and people see that as aggressive when I'm just excited about what I'm sharing. And, people say it all the time, but it's true. I'm passionate, but people call it aggressive. So here was the thing. You can be passionate and you can be excited, but most people have never been taught how to manage their state and how they deliver. And that's the work that we did. We focused on his state management because the reality is this: we're not responsible for how people receive us. However, we can be intentional and have control of ourselves and how we deliver it so it actually lands and people walk away with the right perception of us. Right? Because his intention, his objective was to build relationships with his team members, his employees, his colleagues, and even more so with his team members, he wanted to resonate with them as well. So we had to work on how we delivered. We started working on his state management, and don't worry, I'm going to get into that shortly. And we rehearsed it. We practiced it. We role played how he would deliver no matter what was going on in the room, no matter if he was excited about the subject line or, he felt like he disagreed with what was being said. So we moved him from a space where he was reacting really quickly after someone shared something to a space where he was in control with how he responded. And it shifted everything. And here's what I want to tell you. It doesn't happen overnight, but you have to make a decision that this is what you want for yourself. And those small steps, when you practice, make the large differences. That's when things are really impactful, right? And when I say practice, here's how simple it gets to be. If people have said that you're aggressive and you've decided for yourself that you want to show up in a different way because you want people to truly hear what you have to say, I want you to practice everywhere. And this is where my client practiced. They practiced in the grocery store. They practiced when they were ordering things, when they're in line and, people were taking long and people were pissing them off. That was, that was an opportunity for them to manage their state and not react, but respond. Right? So I want you to remember, I don't want you to speak from a reactive state. I only want you to speak when you can manage how you show up from a regulated state. So the first part of the framework is regulate before you respond. And here are some tips for you. So in that moment where you're ready to react, I want you to drop your shoulders. And then I want you to slow your breath. And when I say slow your breath, here's how I define it. I want you to inhale through your nose and exhale through your mouth. No one needs to know that you're doing this, but the way that you engage your parasympathetic nervous system, that calming and get into that calm state, you want to exhale longer than you inhale. For example, inhale for 4 and then exhale for 6. And that pushes our nervous system into that calmer state. Then I want you to pause 2 seconds before you respond. That pause is huge. That pause is powerful Because when you pause, one, you calm yourself, one, you allow the people who are just about to receive what you're going to say to shut down their barriers just a bit, and it increases the likelihood of them receiving the message in the way you intended it, right? Remember, confidence is not an emotion. It's a trained state. It's a skill set that you get to build. So you don't hope to sound more confident and calm. You create the conditions, your physiological state, so you can show up in that way. You have to choose to take ownership for creating the conditions so you can respond and not react. Got it? Now, the second part of the framework, I want you to say less, but mean more. So it's all about precision. It's not about being loud. A lot of people believe that you have to speak louder to be heard. And that is so, so, so wrong. Have you ever been in a room, and we've all been there, right? I'm not judging, not saying anything, just calling out the facts. Have you ever gone into a room and there's a bunch of people, and there's some people who may be speaking louder than the others, and there might be a yapper in the room. And when the meeting starts or the session starts, you realize that the most powerful person in the room, or maybe the boss or the CEO, or just, you know what, you understand what I mean by the most powerful person in the room, is the one that has said the least. You see, aggression is often people showing up with heightened emotions or unfiltered emotions. And with that comes too many words. When it comes to showing up in a manner that's assertive, it's the complete opposite. You're clean. Like the language that you use is very clean. You're direct. You're not rude, you're direct. And you use intentional language. Now, here's what happens when people do not manage their state and move into a place where they say way too much and they're not focusing on precision, they're focusing on volume. They start to over explain, or they go the opposite. They soften their point too much and they back up and don't really share what they want to share. Or they reiterate their point too many times where people get just tired of hearing it. Or they seek people's approval while speaking, like right mid-sentence, saying things like, you know what I mean? Or, right? Trying to get people's approval and get people's buy-in. And at that point, people watch your whole display and they either go super quiet, they shut down because they don't want to say a thing, or they don't want to engage because they don't want to heighten that energy that you have that they don't like, that they don't connect with anymore. Here's the calm authority rule. If it's important, I want you to not dilute what you're saying by over-explaining. Simplicity is key. So let me give you some concrete examples so you know how to do it and what it sounds like and what it looks like. So instead of saying, I totally disagree with what you're saying and it doesn't make any sense, and we've all been in interactions where that's what you've said or you wanted to say something like this. I completely hear what you're saying, but I want you to consider a different approach or a different way of thinking about it, and then share what you're sharing. Make sure that you're concise. Another example. I don't know if this makes sense, but see, here we're asking for approval. We're asking for Brian. Don't just share what you share. Share what you're sharing and say something like this. Here's how I see it, and say what you're saying. Get rid of those filler statements and those filler words. It should be short and clean, and then you're done. Here's how I want you to think about it. If you've been saying 3 sentences, I now want you to say it in 1. And that will allow you to bring everything together, say what you're saying, main points, concise, clear, and complete. Now let's move into part 3 of the framework. I want you to definitely say what you're saying, but I want you to hold the line and stop yourself from pushing. So saying what you're saying without needing to win. And I call it detached authority. Because here's how a lot of people show up in these interactions where people have in the past called them aggressive. They either push too much and become aggressive, and what happens is the people listening shut down. And on the other hand, some people just avoid and say nothing and leave the interaction, and the next day, next hour afterwards, you're pissed at yourself because you didn't share what you wanted to share. You left the interaction without saying a thing. Now, when it comes to showing up in an assertive manner, it comes down to you holding your position without being emotionally attached. So, if the person speaks to you after you've spoken, if they speak back to you in an aggressive manner, you have to stay responsible. You are responsible for your own emotions, and you cannot lean into matching their energy. And as I talk about matching energy, make sure you go back if you haven't already and watch or listen to episode number 10, where I talk about what's really happening when you match people's energy and why you need to stop it ASAP. When it comes to detached authority, you have to ask yourself, are you looking for a conversation? Are you looking to share information? Or are you looking for a confrontation? If you're looking for a confrontation, that is not detached authority. You don't have to win a conversation to deliver it in a manner that is authoritative. It comes down to your delivery every single time. It's not about the volume. It's not about you winning. It's about you deciding that what you have to say is just as important as what anyone else in the room has to say, and you being willing to deliver it in a manner that doesn't shut everyone else down. And it's completely doable. I want you to state it, then I want you to hold it, and I don't want you to chase anyone about it. You leave it alone and allow people to make decisions on their own based on what you've just said. So in practice, here's what you're going to do. You're going to say your point clearly, then you're going to stop talking. And then, this is the hard part, you're going to let the silence do all of the work, right? And if there's pushback, instead of saying, I hear you, and my position is still the same and becoming reactive, keep it simple and say, you know what, that doesn't work for me, and I'd like to proceed with what I've just said. Or you continue to repeat your position. Don't be pulled into someone else's reactive state. Repeat your position. No, thank you for that thought, but I will still move forwards with what I've just shared. Someone else yaps away. Thank you so much for your thoughts, but I'm still going to move forwards with what I've previously shared. Thank you for your thoughts. And your tone doesn't have to shift. You don't have to get rude. Simply you stay calm. Remember that state management and redeliver what you've said. No over justifying it. No huge emotional takeoff or spike or uproar. No need to convince. That's true authority. You see, assertiveness is not being louder. It's not about being the loudest person in the room. It's about being clear enough how do I say this? Let's keep it simple. Assertiveness isn't about being louder. It's about being super clear. It's about being clear enough that you don't need to be loud. Does that make sense? When you intentionally manage your emotional state, your nervous system, your words become precise. And then you no longer become attached to someone else's approval. And then you do not come across as aggressive. You come across as someone who knows exactly where they stand. And that's a true difference between assertiveness and showing up in a manner that's aggressive. And I want to remind you that it's always a choice. Now, if you haven't listened to my other episodes, I want you to go back, jump on them, because I share a ton load of tools that can help you in so many situations and scenarios, my friends. And as we get to close out, as I go ahead and close out this episode, I want to remind you of the 3-part calm authority framework. 1, regulate before you respond. Control your physiology. Number 2, say less and mean more. I want you to focus on precision, not volume. And the 3rd part of the framework, I want you to hold the line. I want you to stand your ground without needing to win and showcase that detached authority. Now, if you have someone around you who has been called aggressive and they want to shift, make sure to send them this episode. Or if there's someone you know who needs to listen to this, make sure to share it with them as well. And in the meantime, I will see you on the next episode of With Karen D, the podcast.